session in our board training series. Hopefully you all have some food. We've got what we need. Go ahead, make sure you're all settling in. Washtenaw Jewish Community Board Training Series 2026. All right, so just to take us back in this Wayback Machine, we've gone through 3 sessions. First session, if you remember, was like your board roles and responsibilities. That was back in February. And that one, increasing our knowledge, our understanding of what we are supposed to be doing while we're sitting on the board. And then the second one was fiduciary responsibility. So about the finances and the fund development, we talked us through the money talk, looking to get us towards more financially stable and sustainable in terms of the placement of where we're at in our world. But today, the excitement, the third session. This is the culmination. We're bringing it all together. This is the broader ecosystem. We're looking outside of our own boards into what's happening ourselves within this larger context of all the Jewish community organizations that are coming here today and those who are not even in the space in this room. So we're thinking about community collaboration, we're talking about engagement and cooperation. So with that in mind, this is our format. So Eileen's going to talk us through. It's engaging. She's got information to share, and she's going to be asking you to participate. So get ready. It's going to be fun. We've got community history, Jewish community today, the Jewish community timeline, collaborations, and then we have an opportunity for questions. Of course, if you have questions along the way, be sure to share them. And we'll also be, if there's things we miss, if there's topics you've been like, well, I really did want to know more about X, Y, and Z, or something came up that you brought back to your board and people had some good conversations, we'll have an opportunity towards the end to be in space all together and talk about that. And then we'll ask for some feedback. So those 4 principles, we're going to look back to these as well to guide how we're going to be in space together. We'll ask you to come in with your sense of curiosity, seek to understand, engage. Eileen said, please sit with people you know and those you don't know. So if you, wherever you're at today, whether you're sitting with them or you're out in the hallway when we're writing on boards, be sure to seek opportunities to engage with one another. Be present. Try to be focused and in the space when we're here together, and take care of your needs. There's plenty of food. Help yourself. Take care of your needs. So that's it, except for introductions. So today's introductions, we've got 3 things: your name, your organization, and we're going to move ourselves from who we are as individuals into our community. So our guiding question today is, what helps you feel rooted in the Jewish community in Washtenaw County? So take that for whatever you want, however you want to interpret that, but we're moving to how we feel within the Jewish community. Are y'all ready?
I'm really not ready. I'm Rena Bash, and I'm part of the Ann Arbor Reconstructionist congregation, as well as the A2J Climate Circle and the Jewish Community Relations Council. And all of you, I have so many ways to answer this question that I don't feel ready to to share. But I think it's the people and the commitment to community and some of the organizations that have been here a really long time that cross over the congregational boundaries.
There's no right or wrong answer, by the way. Don't feel the pressure.
No, there must be a right answer.
Yeah.
Number 3.
You should probably get the 1 and 2 right. But the third
I'm still Dave, 3rd time's a charm. I'm in the Ann Arbor Reconstructionist congregation, as is the rest of the table, because we did a great job of mingling again. What helps me feel rooted in the Jewish community here in Washtenaw County? I guess, because it's a college town, I kind of feel rooted in it just because you meet people who have roots sort of from all over. And that sort of feels right because there's Jews all over. And so it feels representative as opposed to sort of all of us having the same background and having come from the same place and the same 3 congregations. And so it for me reinforces that sort of deeper mycelium-like web work of connection among Jews globally.
Hi, I'm Julie Norris. I think what helps me feel rooted is, number one, participating actively in my own congregation in different ways. I think also when I'm involved with another organization like JFF, if I go and work in the kitchen, that makes me feel rooted in the Jewish community. And if I go to a service at another synagogue because my friend is playing guitar that night, it feels more broadening and feel rooted in the community.
My name is Tara Cohen. I'm also with AARC, because as Dave said, we really commingled. Yeah, I'm having trouble answering the question, but I think similarly, being involved with the congregation that I'm a part of with my family and the Sunday school program for our kids. And also, this is going to sound really weird, but I really like that Zingerman's, even though it's not really like a Jewish organization, that they really feature a lot of Jewish foods, and it makes me like, I like seeing that in like just random ads and random places, and it makes me feel like, see, to my parents that think there's no Jews, there's Jewish people here.
Do you want to take it? Why don't you sit down? We'll come back. Yeah, give her a second.
Hi everyone, I'm Taryn. I'm with Beth Israel, and it's a hard question. A lot of things, like everyone else has said. I think one of the things is just knowing, like, starting to really, like, Shabbat services on Saturdays, knowing it's always there. Like, sometimes I'll have my dad come with me or a kid come with me. And getting to know more and more people there and knowing just how the service flows and how we do it there. And that just makes me feel like it's like a grounding thing each week that I know is there if I need it.
I'm Jennifer Russell with Beth Israel, and I think time is something that has made me feel rooted in this community. I was born and raised here and left for a little while, but came back, and I just think being here a long time.
Hi, I'm Jack Billy with Temple Beth Emmett. And I think my own congregation, Beth Emmett, is what makes me feel most rooted in the Jewish community in Washtenaw County, but I really enjoy all the activities when we have representatives of other Jewish organizations, because I get to learn things beyond my own walls. And so things like this are really helpful to expand those roots. Thanks.
I'm Steve Lieber from Beth Israel, and I think that not only being grounded in Beth Israel, but knowing so many people from so many different organizations, and the fact there's so few barriers here compared to many communities is wonderful.
I'm Lavana Aronson from JCC, and it's kind of the chicken or the egg. It's like being involved makes me more rooted, but wanting to be rooted makes me get involved. So,
I'm Alex Baum with the JCC. You can answer this question in different ways. For us, our family, we're remote workers. We have no local colleagues. So we need to be rooted in something, or else we would know nobody. So we doubled down with JCC when our kids were going here for preschool and camp and aftercare, because that's where we built our community out of, because otherwise we don't know anybody. And when we moved here, we knew nobody. Now we know a lot of people, so it's great.
My name is Sheila Deskins. I'm with Temple Beth Emmett. What makes me feel rooted? Other people in the community that have different backgrounds, and I don't know, try to go for the more inclusive environments.
Midge Cohn, Temple Beth Emmett, and it's because Ann Arbor is small, I'm able to get involved in many things that share my values, and it's seeing people, it's seeing Jewish people that I recognize. you know, and it doesn't have to be in events, it can be in the grocery store. It just is so wonderful. And the people I recognize are people that I've shared experiences with in things I've been involved in. So that makes me feel rooted.
Hi, Kathy Marshall from Temple Beth Emmett, and like Jack, I think what really makes me feel rooted here is Temple Beth Emmett and knowing all the people there. I think there are a few things I've done outside of the Temple environment. A little bit of involvement with J-Corps and a little bit of involvement with through the Dayenu Circle at Temple with the climate action work with other temples as well. But I really think the roots though came through Temple.
I'm George Bryloff. I'm a member of Temple Beth Emmett. I'm also on the JCC board, and oh, you didn't know that. So anyway, what helps me feel rooted? I think for me, it's really just engagement. And I grew up in Detroit, and we were never members of a congregation. I came out this way to go to college. I met this wonderful young lady, married her, and we've raised our kids at Temple Beth Emmett, and we've been there about 30 years. So I think really engagement, I think you can find what you need. And I'm doing some interacting through my brotherhood at TBE, through some congregations in Oakland County too. So, and on the national level with brotherhood. So it's all here.
I'm Betsy Mark from Temple Beth Emmett. And what got me rooted here was coming here on my 18th birthday, finding Temple Beth Emmett not quite 4 years later, and loving it, but also having worked at Beth Israel for 20 plus years when my parents did the catering there, and then I stayed on. So I feel very rooted. And when I grew up in Ironwood, there were no Jews. Most of them were buried by that time. So grateful to be here.
Ronnie Shapiro from Temple Beth Emmett. I came here and I wasn't involved with anything. And, well, I was working in Detroit, whatever. And I went to services at Hillel and for high holidays. And the 5th year when the rabbi repeated his sermon, I said, "This is not good." Whatever, you know, the point was, I remembered the point, so it was not good. So I looked around, I found Temple Beth Emmett, and I've been involved with Hadassah way back when, so I knew people from Beth Israel too, which was great. But Temple Beth Emmett became my home.
My name is Bonnie Keene from Temple Beth Emmett. What helps me feel rooted is that I've been part of, I've been actively involved in two institutions in Ann Arbor. One is the JCC when my kids were little, and I was in a leadership position there, and then at Temple Beth Emmett, a leadership position as well. So that's what keeps me rooted.
And just for the record, we didn't know each other before tonight. So they're all new to us.
I'm Dan Mishkin. I'm the only Ann Arbor Reconstructionist congregation person who decided to sit with other people. Because I want to learn from other people. I'm fairly new in town, so I could tell you a lot about why I felt rooted in the Lansing Jewish community. I'm hoping to find ways, that's why one of the reasons I joined the board, was here I am in another Reconstructionist congregation. I believe in Reconstructionism, and I want to find out what's going on there, how people think, but also then what's going on in the community. I just want to learn more, so I allowed myself to get roped in, and and here I am.
I'm Naomi Israel. I think I'm the only person here from Ann Arbor Orthodox Minyan tonight. I was thinking about the word root, which in plants is the way that something plant gets its nourishment. So I guess how do I get my nourishment? So I've only been here for 1.5 years. I've been in Santa Fe, New Mexico for 20 years, But I think that the way that I feel connected and nourished by this community is actually an advice that I really like to take from Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler, who says that you build connections by actually giving. So you can't really build a connection if you're only taking, if you're only being nourished like a plant. So I think one thing that I've done, and my husband and I have always done in our communities, is we commit ourselves, even though we have limited resources or limited time. We have to, I think sometimes you have to make a sacrifice. You decide, okay, this is going to be a priority to the exclusion of other things that I could be doing with my time or my money or whatever. And so I think that's a really important aspect of our family already feeling pretty rooted. We spend a lot of time hosting U of M students for Shabboses. I spend a lot of time cooking, but yeah, I think that's sort of the way that we're kind of connecting is hopefully through giving, and hopefully we're giving in the right ways. That's always the hard part, is identifying the need and then giving.
Thank you. My name is Deborah Green. I'm with Beth Israel Congregation, and I'm feeling increasingly rooted in the Jewish community because I'm spending more. I have noticed that I have multiple weeks with multiple days with multiple Jewish activities in each of those days. It's really it's really become, to a great extent, next to home, sort of the center of my life, and that's very fine. Between Beth Israel and JCOR, Jewish Congregations Organized for Resettlement, and the Network Jewish People of Color in Greater Ann Arbor, and now a new effort that we're putting in to raise $100,000 to pay for a full-time attorney to give free legal services to immigrants. If you hear more about that, let me know. I find it, that initiative is based in respective congregations. So that still keeps me engaged with the Jewish community. It's quite an experience. Thank you very much. Oh, and much of that is punctuated by giving. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Annie Wallach. I'm with the Federation. I'm on the board. I'm also with the Ann Arbor Climate Circle. And I've lived in this town for 50 years plus now. The question is what makes me feel rooted in the Jewish community? And quite frankly, I didn't get involved in the Jewish community at all until maybe 8 years ago. And even then I was a little bit off to the side and doing my own thing on a committee. And then I joined the board of the Federation, and I got to know a few people. Then I started going to events and more events, and then I started this Climate Circle, and both the Federation and the Climate Circle are community-wide organizations. And lo and behold, the last main event I went to, I walked in, and there were so many people I knew in our community. And that was the moment I felt rooted.
Okay. Michael Simon. I'm part of Beth Israel Congregation, and I'm also part of the A2J Ann Arbor Jewish Climate Circle. I'm so proud to say that. I think in other meetings I forgot to say that I was part of the A2J Climate Circle. So what makes me rooted? I compare this to my growing up in Chicago, where we were part of the Reform movement, wonderful Reform movement in Chicago, but I didn't know anybody that was Orthodox or anybody part of the conservative movement. I had some, interaction with the Federation, so I knew there was a Federation, but maybe the size. I think in Ann Arbor we know, we need each other. We all need each other. So I may have a friend that's part of the Orthodox Minyan that's having a Shiva Minyan at Chabad and needs me, and I go there. We've been part of the Orthodox Minyan in our early days. My wife and I both grew up in the Reform movement. My wife's grandfather was one of the first Reform rabbis. He was the first Reformed Hillel rabbi. So we feel strongly connected to the Reform movement, but we're at home in our congregation. And I feel maybe the right thing to say is I'm home being Jewish in Ann Arbor.
Hi, my name is Vida Stramba. I'm with Beth Israel Congregation. What keeps me rooted is raising my children at Beth Israel and making connection with the larger community. I really like hosting Shabbat dinners at my house for our new converts.
I'm Eileen Freed. For me, Jewish community has always been like a very pluralistic, cross-denominational, cross-organizational kind of experience. And that's one of the things I love about living in a community like this, is that it's so easy for us to have those cross-communal experiences, especially when we're intentional about it. But even when we just, some of the things, especially that come out of, let's say, the JCC, like the film festival and the book fairs and everything, is like when you see everybody come together, or the main event for that matter, but like seeing everybody across the community together, that gives me energy. And like Vita, I also, my husband and I love to host Shabbat dinners, and one of the things that's really fun for us is to bring lots of different kinds of people together over the Shabbat table and have different people meet one another and then find their own roots in the community. So.
I'm Karen Cooper, and I'm with the Recons, and I think I was here a long time before I started to feel very rooted. But I do like, it amazes me the crossover, like people were saying, like apples and honey, or donating blood at Beth Israel. That was it. But I think joining the congregation and getting to know people who I knew outside of the congregation, but getting to know them in a Jewish space, I think gets me rooted.
They were all excellent answers. I think too, I personally feel a sense of being rooted in the Jewish community. From my congregation, but it's seeing Jewish people out and about that I recognize from different spaces. We are a smaller Jewish community than the one that I grew up in, Metro Detroit. And so there's a sense of like, we're part of something a little more unique, which I wouldn't have thought of as much in the area that I grew up. So I'm glad you're all here, and I'm looking forward to learning more about our Jewish community. And so I'm going to turn things over.
I have found my notes. Okay. So first of all, I just thinking about being rooted in the Jewish community and supermarkets. I mean, honestly, Hiller's used to make me feel rooted in the community. And my son worked there when he was in high school for a period of time before he went off to Israel on an Israel program. And it was amazing how many people would run into him and then he wished them a Shabbat Shalom. And that was like just a really fun, it really felt like, that felt very special. We miss that, but we still have our supermarkets. Anyway, so I'm going to be talking first. I'll tell you all the things that I'm going to talk about today, or that we're going to do together today. And I really do want this to be interactive. Some of it you're just going to hear from me, but what I really encourage you to do is raise your hand or just yell out if I have some information wrong that doesn't seem like the way you remembered it, or something to add color to some of what I'm going to share with you. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit is about the history of our community, and which involves obviously all of these organizations, and then a little snapshot of the Jewish community today based on information from our community study. So, and there are some, we don't have that many highlight documents, but you'll recognize my slides from highlight documents in this that's at your tables. Then we'll take a break, and afterward we're gonna build a timeline together. So at Federation we have September, October, November, December, and we sort of just plop in what are the major things that are gonna be happening during each of those months. And so I'd love for us to do that together. A lot of times people talk about how it would be helpful to know about fundraisers and things like that. We won't be looking for, the detailed, each tiny little program, but things that will be of interest across the community. So we're gonna do that together. There's some papers out there in the hallway that we'll do that with. And then we'll come back in and we'll talk a little bit about what are some things that we're already doing as a community to engage in collaborative efforts together, and what are maybe some best practices and ways that we can do that more. And then we'll do a collaboration brainstorm. So I'll talk more about that later. Those are what we're going to focus on during my time with you. So Oh, and I do just want, this is just fun. You all received this glossary of Jewish organizations. It's just some Jewish organizations, but you know, we Jews, we love our acronyms. Apparently so do non-Jews, I've learned. But Jews really do love the acronyms, and these are both local, regional, national. So I encourage you, for you to take home, and you will get an online copy of it so that you can click on links at another time. Okay, so regarding the history, much of this is based on Professor Todd Engelman's A Short History of the Jews of Ann Arbor, a working paper. He published this in 1997, so it's not outdated in terms of, you know, where he got to. That's all correct, but whatever comes after came from websites, came from information that people provided me. So that'll be fun as you can help me fill in some of the blanks. This history is by no means all encompassing. I do have, again, I will send you Todd's paper in full, plus the timeline that I made up to go along with my presentation. But this is really a chance for us to work together to build the missing pieces. And I will apologize in advance that I did not have time to find fun photos. I did try to find a few and it didn't happen, but next time. Okay, so we're starting a long time ago in 1845 when Solomon Wiles settled in Ann Arbor, and he and his brother joined him in the mid-1850s, and they established a company called J. Weil and Brothers. And their home became the headquarters for Jewish peddlers and travelers in the region. So then in the early 1960s, the Jews of Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti purchased land for a cemetery. It was the first Jewish burial ground in Michigan. Does anybody know what sits on that space now? Rackham. That is correct. It was at the corner of Fletcher and Huron, and Rackham is where it stands. There is a little stone and a plaque right near there where you can see that information. Yes.
Typo, right?
What did I say?
1850s.
Yeah, sorry. No, wait, did I write 1950s? Yeah, typo. What kind of what? You know what, I don't know the answer to that story. I do have some other information about what other people did. Sorry. It might be in Todd's. That which makes sense because some of our other early folks are also fur traders, and I'll talk about them in a moment. But we do. Todd's book is a little bit more detailed. So by the mid-1880s, however, the Jews had left. Like they were here for this period of time, and then they just sort of moved away. It wasn't a great spot for them. But then in the early 1900s, we have the return of Jewish settlement here. And so Ozias Swerdling, who was a furrier, Israel Friedman was a scrap metal dealer, and David Mordsky was a tailor, and David Friedman, of unknown occupation, arrived in the area. So Ozias and his wife Hannah started holding high holiday services in their home, and this was the genesis of Beth Israel Congregation. They organized formally as the first Jewish congregation, and they hired a gentleman named Pinchas Gropstein to serve as a teacher, butcher, and cantor combo. And that's kind of how they operated for a while. A butcher, a teacher, and a cantor. It's not that unusual. I've heard of other situations but that is what he did. So butchers were often very learned because they had to learn all the rules of kashrut. So it's not that unusual that a butcher would also be a teacher, and then if he had an okay voice or just could lead services, then they use him for that too. Now, for those of you who were around a couple weeks ago, we celebrated University of Michigan Hillel's 100th anniversary, and they are the fourth Hillel in the entire country after Illinois, Wisconsin, and Ohio State. Fascinating that all these first Hillels were from this Big Ten Midwest area. So in 1932, Beth Israel did hire a rabbi. His name was Jacob Spurka, but he was only the rabbi for 2 years. And after that, until 1944, they continued with the whole butcher, cantor, teacher situation. And the Hadassah chapter was formed with 10 members. I will say that by 1946, there were 98 members. And there's other data in this book that talks about the really incredible growth of Hadassah in Ann Arbor. So pre-World War II, yes?
Yeah, I just signed up. Okay.
Beth Israel started in 1960.
How did you get roped into that? 16?
Well, maybe Todd cheated you out of a couple of years. I don't know.
1960.
I think you're right, because I wasn't here when you celebrated the 100th. So, but I was just taking the numbers from this thing. We're off by 2 years. We will fix that. Thank you. So before World War II, the Jewish community was small and business-based and not very pious or well-educated, either religiously or secularly. They weren't that wealthy, and their institutional life was pretty, weak and undeveloped. I mean, we did have the one synagogue, which was traditional in orientation, but that didn't cater maybe to people who were less observant. It basically catered to everybody. Some people also went to Hillel, and they turned to its director to conduct weddings and funerals and bar mitzvahs. But after World War II, society in general changes, right? It's more tolerant, there's less occupational and educational anti-Semitism. American higher education opens up, including the University of Michigan. Then there's a lot of expansion in general in the Ann Arbor community and for the Jewish community. The university and obviously the medical facilities became a real magnet for Jews. So Hillel and Beth Israel started sharing space, and they were in 2 different locations. I don't have the specific locations. And in 1956, Beth Israel founded a nursery school, the Beth Israel Nursery School. It did become independent as Beth Shalom Nursery School, but was still within the same facility. So in 1961, UJA, United Jewish Appeal, was established. The focus of UJA was on raising funds for those in need in Israel and around the world. Obviously, Israel was very young at that stage and had just come through a decade of great difficulty, and so the people in the community here really wanted to support the efforts there. So in 1965, Professors Charles Garvin, Jack Rothman, and Eugene Litvak created a secular cultural Jewish school. It was about 1 day a week, and they formed it was called Jewish Cultural School, and there were 25 families. The adults also started meeting for secular and cultural events, so they changed the name in 1968 to the Jewish Cultural Society. And then we have Professor Ronald Tukovsky. I'm giving you names because some of you guys might know these people, so I think it's fun to know their names. I didn't put it on here, but I'll update and send you what I have. He formed a group interested in Reform Judaism, and that became the nucleus of Temple Beth Emek. So as a little bit of a counterbalance, as the community is beginning to grow and have more local needs, it's something called the Jewish Community Council, also JCC, but not the JCC, was created to address local issues and needs. And the membership of this council consisted of 2 representatives from every organization. So in 1969, clearly we're in a time of great growth here. Temple Beth Emek hires Bruce Warshall as its first full-time rabbi. And in 1971, they start sharing space with St. Clair of Assisi. And then they entered into their joint ownership arrangement in 1975. In 1972, Sonny Tate and Ricky Laufer created Camp Renana, a summer day camp. And it met at the Beth Israel Hillel building. It was not there was no JCC, so they just formed a camp. So there could be a day camp for folks. And then in the early 70s, the Orthodox congregation was formed under the auspices of Hillel to help meet the needs of both traditional students and faculty, as well as people who didn't have any particular university affiliation.
I actually think AAOM, if that's what you're talking about, started in 1965.
So not according to Todd Endelman, so I'll let you pick that up with him. He's the professor, but that's the information I have. But I will make note of that so that I can, so 1965, all right, we'll make note. Chabad House was established, we're celebrating a lot of 50s this year. The Chabad House was established by Rabbi Goldstein and his wife Esther in 1975. At the same year, Hebrew Day School was established. The Washtenaw Jewish News was established, a completely volunteer-run organization until Susie Ayer became their first editor. And then in 1978, I don't have this on here, I will get to Beth Israel, but UJA hired their first executive director, who was Carol Amster, Zichronah Livracha, and she was a part-time director of UJA at the time. And then Beth Israel moved into their new building on Washtenaw. So in 1984, a group convened by Chuck and Sharon Newman organized a Jewish community center. Chuck was motivated by having been on a tour to Israel with some other friends and people from other communities, and he realized that now is time for our community. We were big enough to have a space that was not necessarily a religious space, and they rented a building on East Stadium. I believe there's a picture of that in the hallway. Beth Shalom Nursery School and Camp Renana moved to the JCC building, and then they merged into the JCC in 1988. Did I not do that? Thank you. There we go. Thank you. Then in 1986, the JCC purchases Clinton Elementary School, in which we are sitting right now. And the UJA and the Jewish Community Council merged together to become the Jewish Community Association / UJA of Washtenaw County, and they joined the national body, the Council of Jewish Federations. So JCC opens their new site, HDS also relocates here, and in 1988, Nancy Margolis becomes the executive director of both the JCC and the Jewish. No, I might have written the wrong. Oh, it's not even on here. That's okay. But she's the director of both the JCC and the UJA, Jewish Community Association combo, which was obviously kind of a mouthful, so somebody got smart and renamed it to the Jewish Federation of Washtenaw County. I can also report, and it's not on here, that when I was interim director, we changed it to Jewish Federation of Greater Ann Arbor, because nobody outside here knew what Washtenaw County was.
So when was the separation between?
That is coming.
Okay.
That is coming. It's an excellent question. Excellent question. And so, and then also in 1993, the Jewish Family Services was formed as part of Jewish Federation. So in 1994, the Ann Arbor Reconstructionist Chavurah was formed, and it incorporated, thank you, David, in 1999. We'll get to when they became a congregation in a moment. But the Jewish Community Foundation was established in 1996. And then in 1999, on the heels of a big community visioning planning process, the JCC and Federation decided to separate the executive director function. I honestly cannot imagine how she was running two organizations and their boards at the same time. So that is when Nancy became solely the JCC director, and the Federation hired their first executive director, Jeff Levine. And in 2004, Jewish Family Services became an independent organization. In 2012 is when, and it's not on here because I found out about it after these were done, the Ann Arbor Reconstructionist Congregation became a congregation, and they hired their first rabbi, Michal Wall, in 2013. So that is where we are today. Before I get on to today, any questions, any additional corrections? I gotta write this down, the 1916 for Beth Israel. Anything else? Okay.
One.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned my wife's grandfather
Mhm.
was the first Hillel rabbi at OSU. And I forgot the year that they laid the cornerstone on the old Hillel. He was there.
That's amazing.
With my mother-in-law, who was a kid.
That's really
Yeah,
amazing.
I'm curious in the Beth Israel archives.
That's so cool. Oh, so he was at this cornerstone.
He was at this cornerstone.
Oh.
He laid the cornerstone here from,
Oh.
it was back then maybe Ohio, Michigan.
Maybe they got along a little bit better. Maybe their fans weren't so mean. Okay.
I mean,
Yes.
has anybody, and maybe in the Orthodox Union you do this, has anybody tried to form a Kavra or done Tahara?
That is such a great question. I'm not aware of that being done on a communal level. And it's interesting, I know my son's in Louisville, and they do have more of a community approach to that. In this community, it's really been synagogue-based, and they have purchased land at some different cemeteries, and they utilize the services of some of the funeral homes in Detroit. But there hasn't been anything like that, and I think that's a really interesting opportunity for collaboration,
I
actually.
think anybody interested should
Yeah.
talk to me, because there was one in Lansing, which is a smaller Jewish community. It was a great experience to be part of.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody I know who's been involved in something like that has said that. It's a really interesting opportunity. Anybody else? So who are we today? I'll get some more details from the study, but we have lots of synagogues. I always like when I'm telling people about, about our community, we have one of everything. That's a great thing. A lot of people think maybe we're too small for one of everything, but we're not. They're really active.
You also have the Pardes Chana.
I forgot my Pardes Chana. I knew I was forgetting something there too.
Is there a way we can get the climate circle on there too?
Yes. Is it not? Oh no, I didn't put it on there either. See, I knew I'd forget things. So that's why I say this is collaborative. Yes. So one of everything, and I did forget Pardes Chana, so thank you. And I'm usually really good about remembering them. We have a lot of campus institutions, not just U of M Hillel, but Eastern Michigan Hillel is part of something called HCAM, which is a statewide consortium of smaller universities. We have, of course, our various centers for Jewish studies and fraternities and sororities. I see you back there, and then go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. Do
Yeah.
all of the synagogues have buildings?
No, not every synagogue has a building. Two congregations meet here.
Which ones?
Jewish Cultural Society and the Recon meet here. And the Ann Arbor Pardes Chana, oh really, because they used to meet at Beth Israel. Pardes Chana, I think they meet at Beth Israel, but maybe I'm wrong. And I know that Orthodox Minyan meets at Hillel.
2010. They used to meet across the street from Beth Israel.
No, 2010, they've been meeting
No,
at
no, no, no.
2010. Yeah, yeah. and-
Originally, they met.
Right.
Okay.
But, yeah. And Deborah?
There's also the Frankel Institute for Advanced Judaic Studies that you would have.
That's part of the Frankel Center for Judaic Studies. That's just their Frankel Center. That's just a program. Their fellows program of the Frankel Center. It's part of the same program.
They like separate buildings, but it's up to
Okay. Well, I'll keep it as the same for now. We of course also have cross-communal institutions. You can see the JCC, and I included the camp and the Early Childhood Center, the JFS, Hebrew Day School, the Chabad and their camp, and Federation and our foundation. And then, yes, I did throw in a few here. I was trying to be inclusive as possible, but I did forget the climate circle. Yes. Yeah, so I'm gonna mention Hadassah. So Hadassah, participation was dwindling. So Ann Arbor Hadassah falls under the Detroit Hadassah, but they're not super active. So like if you give a gift to Ann Arbor Hadassah, you can designate that your gift was from Ann Arbor, but we haven't had really a lot of activities. Maybe that'll be a retirement
I
project.
just want to share that many years ago, there used to be the 40-something group, the Simcha group.
Yeah, part of Hadassah, yeah.
And, we are still, I mean, we're not part of Hadassah.
Right.
But this is how we all
But
met.
yes. Yeah, absolutely. And there's lots of groups. I mean, I'm part of a group of people who get together to do Kabbalat Shabbat and have Shabbat dinner once a month. There's lots of like grassroots groups out there, and we want that. I mean, that's how the Ann Arbor Reconstructionist congregation formed. Taryn.
We are starting up in Ann Arbor, Hadassah Evolve.
Oh,
Yay!
fantastic.
Okay.
They kick off April 16th.
That's for younger women.
20s to 50s.
Great. Okay.
For what?
Great.
20s to 50s.
Nice. Wonderful.
I can divide it.
Pardon? Okay. I take that. Our Jewish Community Relations Council, which is part of Federation, should be noted. Absolutely. Absolutely, yes.
There's also the Jewish Resource Center. And
Yes, I did. I not put them under, yeah, I did.
Oh,
I
did
put
you?
them under
Oh, I
campus
missed them, yeah.
institutions.
And then JLIC.
Well, so I saw JLIC was part of Hillel, so that's
Sort
part
of,
of,
yeah.
JLIC is a rabbi and his wife who serve the needs of the Orthodox Jewish community through Hillel, and so I don't, I didn't put that, but we'll see if it continues, then maybe we'll we'll do that. Yes.
Washtenaw Jewish Genealogy Circle.
Oh. Okay. And then
You know, if you're
you
mentioning
made me think
BBY,
of there's also
if you're
Moishe
mentioning-
House
Yeah,
has a pod here.
and if you're mentioning BBYO, there is Habonim.
They don't have a group. There are people who go to camp, but that's why I didn't.
More.
They're not meeting, and Judea's not meeting. They have camp. If they, I mean, obviously I put them. So what I have here in my notes is that we also have a lot of connections to other regional and national organizations, like Hadassah, for example, or APAC, or all these different organizations. There are people who are involved in lots of different ways, not necessarily through these. And we will add to this list. Thank you for helping add to it.
Wait, there's a BBYO chapter.
No, I put BBYO. She was saying why, down at the bottom, BBYO Hamadah chapter. No, she was asking why no Habonim. And as far as I know right now, there's no Habonim chapter. There's just lots of kids who do go to Habonim camp and to some of the conventions. So what do we know about our local community aside from its institutions, right? And clearly, there's a lot. We keep growing. In the early 2020s, we decided it would be important to conduct a comprehensive study to better understand ourselves and plan for the future. So we engaged, most of you know this, but some of you may not, we engaged Brandeis Cohen Center of Modern Jewish Studies and NORC, which is a group at the University of Chicago, to conduct the study. Important to note about the data I'm going to share with you, and that's in the highlights. Much of the data was collected in late 2022 and 2023. So while much of the demographic data is not really affected, we can only imagine the way some of the data and some of the attitudes would have been changed after October 7th. There are some national studies that JFNA has conducted and the like, and so JFNA being Jewish Federations of North America. And so I'm not going to discuss that now because it's just beyond the scope of what we can do, but I do think it would be interesting for us to maybe learn a little bit more about how some attitudes have been changing. So the study found that we were about 2 to 3 times larger than we thought we were. That said, so just so you know, we did not include undergraduate students, but we did not rule out graduate students from participating in the study. This was intentional. Many grad students are very active in the local community, and then maybe they do move and go somewhere else. Other grad students get active in the community or stay here and then become active in the community and become part of this community. So we thought it was important to capture that data, but I can report that in partnership with JFNA and better understanding some of our data, the number might be more without the grad students is somewhere in the 15 to 18,000 range. Still quite a bit larger than what we thought.
Can you remind me, sorry if you
culture survey, because I remember getting something, I'm like, how did they identify all of us?
So we didn't identify everybody.
Yeah.
And I will tell everybody that you can go to our website and find not just this highlights document, but like all the stuff that goes into the methodology. But basically it was a combination of, first of all the lists from every organization deduplicated, and then a lot of random sampling and a lot of statistical mumbo jumbo that my brain cannot absorb right now. But yes, there were a lot of different ways. Yes. And even with the deduplicated list, it was random if you were, get it, not every member of every congregation received the survey, right? Because it's based on like statistical, I'm blanking on that, pardon? Well, it is a sample, but also like so for example, they sampled differently within Ann Arbor than they did in the outskirts in order to try to find as many people as they can.
So stating like an actual number of Jews, like we might be really undercounting potentially, right?
I doubt we're undercounting, but I don't know if so most people think we're overcounting, to be honest with you, but still, I mean, and we're not the only community, like, Louisville also like, wow, we have that many Jews, like a lot of communities were a little bit surprised, because not everybody's telling you who they are. And I'm not gonna go over everything on each slide, just to be clear. Yeah.
Sorry, we have I've spoken with veteran statisticians who will argue the figure for Jewish persons of color in Washtenaw County, just because it deviates fairly substantially with national data.
Yes, that is true. There are quite a number of things that deviate from national data. For example, we are in this area 5% of the population, according to this study, but that's not that unusual in that we're a college town and have big hospital, and so that does attract more Jews. So we are a higher proportion of the population. It was because the sample size was not that large. I think it was very challenging to make an accurate count. It probably does deviate. There are other ways in which we deviate from the national average, in different directions. So we do tend to be a pretty liberal community, no surprise to anybody. We're also very transient. If you look at the numbers at the bottom, 28% of Jewish adults have moved here in the 4 years preceding this study, and 25 indicated that they plan on moving in the next 3 years. So as a community, that's interesting information, and how do we work with that information? It also makes us very different from a community, let's say like a Louisville, who certainly have people coming in and out, but I have long, deep roots of generations and families who stay there. But we have the advantage of constant influx of new ideas and new energy coming into our community. So there's different ways to look at it, and I think that we need to think about how we can take advantage. I know, Jack, you had your hand up.
When we had looked at the data, the last 2 lines there,
Mhm.
we thought that might be influenced by graduate students in the sample.
For sure.
And we had requested that it might be nice to see what it looked like without the 25%. Not that we
yeah.
would not want to serve them, of course we do, but it might be helpful to understand what the more stable population looks like.
We did do an update on that, and I wonder if that was addressed. So the update is on the website, so it might be worth looking at that. Deborah.
Looking at the transients, it's really interesting to think about how substantially unique that makes us as compared to the Detroit Jewish community, which is right next door.
No, absolutely, and from all kinds of different communities, right? And so we adapt to the kind of community we are, but it's helpful for us to know some of these things.
I have a question. Do we know anything about age distribution?
It's yes.
Okay.
First of all, it might be in here. I didn't take all the slides from here, and secondly, the whole report is on there. I think actually something like 18% are. It is. Yeah, I didn't even give you like the children in Jewish education piece. So, There was something about age though that I saw. All right, you'll have to look in here because I don't want to keep us up. Thank you. Well, it talks about the kids in Jewish education, but there is that about it. So I can help direct you. If you don't find what you're looking for in here, like I said, even the full report is very easy to read. One thing I personally found very interesting was how our geographic distribution is changing. When I moved here almost 30 years ago, I was told to, live in the center or the northeast. There were a lot of Jews in the northeast side of town, up Clague Middle School. Right? Now, unsurprisingly, the largest number of Jews are still in central Ann Arbor because it's close to the institutions and, whatever, like it's near the university, but 31% are on the west side. So, and what's really interesting about the folks on the west side is that 54% of Jews aged 22 to 39 and 41% of Jews aged 40 to 54 are living on the west side. So the west side is becoming where it's at. Yes?
I take issue with the whole geographic distribution.
Mhm.
It's saying that I live in central Ann Arbor. I don't live in central Ann Arbor.
Well, I'm not gonna,
but I'm
if you just make it quiet, yeah.
I'm just saying it's
Okay.
fluid.
I'm not gonna argue with the study, I'm just gonna tell you what it said. But it is very interesting that so many people have shifted. In looking at community connections, one thing I thought was really interesting, aside from the fact that clearly my screenshot is not as high quality as the other ones were, is that 88% of the people in the study felt connected to the Jewish people, but only 35% felt connected to this Jewish community. So something to think about as leaders of organizations. And you can see some of the data about whether or not people reached out. 5% belong to the JCC, 22% belong to a Jewish organization other than the JCC. I am not sure if that includes congregations or not, I must say. So you'd have to look at the full report to get more information. But it's just interesting in terms of how people connect or belong and how that might make them feel connected to the community. And some of that also may be part of that transience that we've talked about. So connections to Israel. One of the areas in which we sort of buck a national trend is that 57% of people in the survey had been to Israel. I don't remember what the actual national average is, but trust me, it's not 57. It's a lot lower. 61% closely follow news about Israel. But also 50% feel that their views about Israel are not welcome in Jewish settings. And those are not only those of us on the, let's say, more, I'm just going to use right and left end of the spectrums because it's easier, but on the more left end of the spectrum, I think there's people who are on the right end of the spectrum who also don't feel comfortable expressing their views about Israel in Jewish spaces. So it's something that we really need to address as a community together.
And I would add.
This was done in 2022-23 is when the data was collected.
And I would add that more than 50% of the Israelis, I would say 80 or 90, feel the view about Israel are not welcome. So it depends.
Yeah, no, that's what exactly. Yeah, I don't think I think a lot of people think that, and I think also earlier on to, not even just during this study, but throughout time, oftentimes people feel that like if they are very critical of Israel or are not Zionists, that then they're not welcome and their views aren't welcome in the Jewish community. And at the same time, people who feel very connected to Israel and very positively toward Israel, the government or otherwise, also have been feeling uncomfortable. When this study was taken, it was maybe a little bit less so, but still that's a challenge for us as a community because we want to be a community. And then anti-Semitism is another one I think that probably really changed. You know, back when we did this, 45% were concerned about anti-Semitism on college campuses. Something tells me that number might have changed. But, you know, maybe not. So I think it's important to note that while most of our community is relatively financially comfortable, 1 in 6 is struggling financially, and 13% say that cost limits their participation in Jewish life. So again, something for us as a community to be thinking about. So one of the questions really was sort of asking people about how they kind of put their Jewish values into play, like what they support, how what they support reflects their values. And you can see that the top, the top areas were support for the vulnerable, social justice, health and human services, combating anti-Semitism, protecting the environment, and Holocaust awareness and education. Jewish education and engagement and security and safety were 9 and 10 on the list. Again, I suspect that those two will have changed. One of the things I can tell you about national data is post-October 7th, there is what they've termed a surge of involvement. I think we've seen some of that happen in our community where our synagogues have both come out of COVID, building up their programming and their involvement, but also as a result of people wanting to be together more. Think we've been seeing an increase in involvement.
Do you know anything about national priorities? I feel like number 11 as your synagogue is kind of surprising to me. That would be
yeah.
Not in the top 10.
But if you think about it, the people who answered this survey,
some of them are not connected.
A lot of them were not members of synagogues. So I think that would probably represent the people who are members of their synagogues. Maybe. Yes.
Yeah, for example, 2/3 of the people who identify as Reform, in terms of what they mostly identify with, are not connected with Temple Beth Emet, but they're responding to this. So they would, I think, be a population that might not consider their congregation or synagogue. They're not really affiliated.
Yeah, denominational identification was not an indication of synagogue membership, interestingly.
So maybe this is telling us then that people are actually giving, even if they're unaffiliated with a local organization, a religious organization like a synagogue. Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was a question about the priorities, so there are questions in there about like what people donate and all this. This was just like, when you donate, what are the things that you care most about?
And security now is probably
That's what I'm saying. Those two things, when I think about education, engagement, and security and safety, like, I can't imagine they're not way at the top. So on the, as a result of this study, not as a result, it was always planned for this study to lead into a community-wide visioning and strategic planning process. It's lagged a little bit, but basically it's a process aimed at working together for us to vision and plan for the future based on the data from the study, but also on qualitative research. So if the study is identifying that there's an issue with people having financial access, bringing together a group of people to talk about that, or intermarried people, or people who are out, who feel Jewish but don't feel part of our community. So doing some focus groups around that. Then engaging in a visioning process and developing a plan to reach that vision. This idea of this community planning does not replace strategic planning for your own organization. So maybe that's a thing you should all be thinking about, right, as board members for your organizations. But how can we as a community structure ourselves and think about one another and the work that we do to avoid duplication, to be stronger together, and to work more collaboratively. So those are some of the kinds of things that are being discussed. We had a community retreat that was the lead professionals and presidents or their designees from every organization. And at that retreat, we agreed that we'll work together to more clearly identify and align around shared priorities and concerns. That's part of asking for people's strategic plans, just so we could see what each other is planning for the future. that will reconvene the group for continued dialogue, and that will embark on a community visioning process for a shared future. So our next meeting is in late April, and the leadership group is planning that, and those people who've been invited, you know, not to keep anybody out. It's just like, it's a lot of people, so. So that is what's coming next. So before we head out to break, pretty much spot on time, any additional questions, thoughts about our Jewish community today? All right, then please feel free to take a break. While you're on a break, you can go into this little antechamber here. You'll see papers that have, you know, months on them. Some of them have 2 months on them. You can take your stickies, you can take your markers, you can take your pens, however you want, and you can start, you know, writing on those, or you can wait for my instructions when you come back. But just letting you know it's out there.